Hi, everybody. I got 7 o'clock and we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We are short 2 trustees tonight, so it's just us 3 here. And I see the names up on Zoom. And so with that, would you join me for Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. Okay, moving on to item 2, additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda. I'm kind of thinking that maybe for tonight only, since we're having budgetary discussions, if we shouldn't move public comment to after the budget discussions. Thoughts? You know, that way people can hear it. And if anyone wants to comment, they can comment, but that'd be just kind of a one-off. I like keeping it up front, but since we're just basically getting information on the budget, thought it might be nice to get the information and give public a chance to comment after that. 3. Yeah, we don't have a lot. So with that, I'll move that we approve the budget and move item 3. Pardon me. No budget approval. Sorry, it's been a long couple of days. Approve the agenda and move item number 3 to after item 7.
I'll second that for this evening.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We approve the agenda as modified. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And there's no one opposed, so. So next would be our consent agenda, and that's our minutes from November 15th. And are there any additions, deletions, corrections to the minutes? And if not, I'd entertain a motion on that.
I move that we approve the consent agenda from including the minutes from November 15th, 1922, 2022.
Here we
Yeah,
go.
you're having about as much trouble as I am tonight.
I'll second that. 2022.
Yeah, okay, it's been moved and seconded. We approve the minutes from November 15th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And there were no opposed. Okay, item number 5, request for approval of special event signage for the Sally Bush Holiday Art Show.
Yeah, so this is a request, kind of a technicality, I guess, but we were approached by the whatever group is doing the holiday art show next Sunday at Sally Bush, and according to Article 4, Section 16-414, special event signs may be permitted with approval of the Board of Trustees. So we thought we'd just go ahead and ask for your approval on this. And my understanding is it's just several directional signs placed around town, most likely in the right of way, which is why it triggered this request for permission. And they will be taken down immediately after the event, is my understanding.
Okay,
I would motion to, we're good
yeah,
on that one? All right. I would motion to approve the special event signage for the Sally Bush Holiday Art Show.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Comment. I think this is something we may want to really consider to have be an administrative item, so it doesn't have to come in front of the board. Something like this to me is obviously a no-brainer. So
Okay.
we might want to modify.
Add
put
that to our
on the-
list.
Add to our list of code updates.
Will do.
Okay, moving on. Item number 6, financial reporting documents.
So this is kind of an item I just threw in, as you can you've probably seen there's several financial reports included in here, but we're finally caught up as far as booking transactions through October of this year. And so I just wanted to give you all examples of the financial reporting that's easily, I mean, there's other reports in there, but these are just some of the examples that I thought were most helpful maybe for the board to review. We can talk more, and we've talked with Todd from DOLA here tonight about kind of what's typical and maybe some ideas of financial reporting that staff should present to the board on a regular basis, whether that's monthly or quarterly or both, in different formats. So I just wanted to present examples of these reports that we have in our accounting software. So we have everything from this very simple fund balance. It's a one pager. It just shows this is showing from January 2022 to October 31st, 2022, the fund balances. Then we have, we get into more complicated reports like the trial balance report, the statement of activities, changes to net assets. And then what I think are kind of the most helpful reports are a year to date. This is actually through yesterday. So we can generate this report perhaps on a quarterly basis just to update the board and say, okay, here's what we've spent on, or here's the revenue. The first section is revenue. So we can keep track of year to date compared to what was budgeted for whatever time period the report is run for. So this is one that we reference a lot as staff, just to see where we're at and to make sure that transactions are being accounted for to the proper account in our software system. Then this is basically a UMB. This is a vendor detail. This is an example of a vendor detail report that we can pull. I pulled this because UMB is our credit card. And so this shows detail of previously what you would receive in those vendor reports. I don't know if any of you remember those. We were doing those briefly when the new board came on, but the old board was familiar with them. We would do the vendor activity reports basically as an approval, even though it was actually sort of a after the fact acknowledgement. But what would show up on there was a UMB, which didn't tell you anything except for we paid X amount to UMB, but within that obviously are separate transactions. And this report is an example of how we're starting to describe those transactions so that moving forward, when we report on those, that UMB expense, for an example, we can show the actual detail of what those each individual transaction was. So it's obviously helpful for us when we're reporting back and looking back, making sure things have been coded to the correct accounts, but then it also can give transparency for the board and for the public as to how those UMB credit cards are being used. And then the last one is just this is a giant vendor report basically from July through November, just to show all the vendor transactions that have occurred in that time frame. So again, just an example of what can easily be drawn out from our reporting system or from our accounting system. And I should say, we're going to make a change at the beginning of the year in how we enter these. To this point, Brian's been doing most of this work, and because he's very part-time, he's been trying to catch up on everything. His method has been doing everything as quickly as possible. So that means journal entries for like some of the auto pays that have come into question in the past. We're going to flip that at the beginning of the year and account for those as basically invoices, just like if you're writing a check, it'll be a cash disbursement that's tied to a vendor instead of just a generic journal entry that doesn't really tell you as much and it's harder to report on. So starting at the beginning of the year, we chose to just keep the same method through this year just to get this year done. But then January 1st, we will start doing the new method, which will then kind of enable us to pull everything into one report instead of having to do like 2 or 3 different reports, depending on the type of transaction that it was. So just examples for you, obviously willing to and able to answer most questions you may have. But just wanted to show you some examples and just get the conversation going about what kind of financial reporting you may want to see moving forward.
Trustees, comments? I've obviously got some. I'm kind of wondering if we might want to start off with at least a quarterly type of report. With this information maybe as background, but really I'm kind of wondering if we pull this up into an Excel graph, basically by department. And, that's easy to do. I can do it if you need, someone to actually do it. And that way we have a visual for those folks that are also kind of visual type people. Also, something that the Pikes Peak Regional Building Department does is they have a percentage of your budget versus a percentage of the expenses. And so what that does, I see Becky smiling and laughing. What that does is at the reporting time, you can see if for that period of time, if your expenses are going over a percentage, and that would be basically a flag to us and say, okay, is this a temporary thing? Because not every set of expenditures follows a linear curve or a linear line. They tend to come and go, but this might be a flag that might call attention to say, okay, we just need to take a look and make sure everything's still going according to plan.
Yeah, that's fine. And all of these reports are exportable to, you can run them as Excel files as well. So we can directly pull them out and then just add graphs. Once we have a template of what you want to see, then we can easily replicate that for each time period or each meeting or whatever that.
Yeah, because it would be really easy to pull in the budget, the expenditures, and the remaining.
And this has like this budget comparison report essentially has that data. It just doesn't visually, have it as a graph or anything, but this could be directly exported into Excel and then we can create that graph. And then I'm not the best at graphs in Excel, but once, if you want to show me or whatever, then we can have that template and then we can just
easy.
Replicate that each time. It's not
Excel basically does it for you. The biggest thing is getting all the labels right.
right.
So
Anyway, so that's just kind of some examples I just wanted to give you. I'm still learning about the some of the not accounting practices necessarily, but how the previous budgets tie into the actual accounting software and how things have been entered. And there's been some things entered where maybe they should have been entered over here instead of there. So that's what we're working through right now in the budget prep and all these reports have helped us or helped me along the way, at least, just to make sure that, we're categorizing everything correctly. And then me learning, what those categories mean in some cases. A lot of that was with the taxes. there was confusion over the last couple of years about what's this check from El Paso County? Is it sales tax? Is it auto use tax? Is it, specific ownership tax? So there's just a lot of those things that we've finally been able to identify and understand. And now moving forward to the new budget, we have accurate projections based on what we've actually received this year, and everything is caught up as far as entry into the accounting system through October. And so now November will be an easy catch up, and then we'll be caught up at the end of the year and able to turn around on an audit much quicker next year. And so, within a few months, we'll have everything sort of understood.
Okay, so the question I told you I was going to ask, your confidence level in the numbers you're getting high?
I have a lot of confidence in this year's numbers because I've looked at them over and over, and I've gone through, had to, ask questions about all the taxes. I feel really good about the projections on revenues, definitely about 99.9% on those. What I'm not as comfortable or assured of is some of the past numbers and how those have tied into spreadsheet that's separate from the accounting software, and so the way the budget's been put together in previous years is, it's entered into the accounting software, but that accounting software is not used to generate the actual budget document. So there's that transposition that has occurred and done by another person. And so we've had to sort of try to, trace those breadcrumbs and try to figure out, okay, why was this number entered here, but not here? Because we think maybe it should be here. And so just that's been the biggest challenge, I think, is trying to understand what previous staff had done, and then make it make sense moving forward when it doesn't always make sense to us. So I'm very confident with revenue projections for this year and next. And so I think the missing piece is sort of maybe going back another year and making sure that based on now that we have the 2021 audit numbers, making sure that the spreadsheets that we're all using match up with that from 2020, maybe even in 2021, so that we're on the same baseline for fund balances and things like that. So that's kind of the next challenge, but I feel like as far as revenue projections, I'm very confident in.
So for 2022, projecting in the black without having to get into our, what I call reserves, but it's actually technically called general fund balance.
So we'll get into that with the budget discussion a little bit. We have been monitoring that and I feel like we're pretty close. There were certainly some items where we had some additional expenses that weren't budgeted for, and other line items where we had achieved some savings. So it's evaluating those, but I feel as though our bottom line for what was budgeted and the bottom line for what will end up needing to be expended will be very close.
Trustees, any other, is what I kind of asked for seem reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're looking at quarterly reports.
Yeah, quarterly reports, high level graphical, and then the details to back it up, basically.
My smile there was because right before you guys got here, we were talking about with Mr. Leopold, what level of granular detail do you all want to get into? And you can see from these reports that you've been presented with here, it gets pretty granular. And whether or not you want the brain strain of combing through those, or just, like you said, that graphic to ensure that we're still on target.
Yep.
So I think we'll work with a couple of different templates and keep working at it until we get it right.
Yeah, like I say, I did that for remember my mayor's thing I did in July for Green Box. I just, Nate ran some numbers for me and I just plopped them into a file and did a graph. It's easy enough.
You talked about past budgets. So it sounds like that's kind of in progress and it may not exactly match up because of the way the accounting was done in the past.
I think that's a piece of it. I think that another piece of it is that when we are drafting a budget for you all, that ends up being a roadmap.
Mhm.
There's always a fluctuation
Mhm.
in that, whether it ends up being something that's unanticipated that comes up and needs to be taken care of, or whether it ends up being that the town received additional revenues that it wasn't expecting. So
Yeah, the detail is mind-boggling to me. I did see a line item. I'm curious about water for the pool.
Mhm.
Is that like the expense to
to fill the-
treat the water?
No, to fill the pool. So because this year we ended up having to fill the pool with the municipal source rather than the well that was there before. The well has collapsed. The guys, I think that the pump was broken on it and they went to try to fix the pump, pulled the pump, and it looked like the well had collapsed. I know where you're going with this
Okay.
and referring to the CSU agreement for water.
Uh-huh.
I pulled that up. It specifically excludes filling the pool.
You're kidding.
However, it does put less of a strain on our filtration system.
It does, and that's absolutely true, is that filling it from a municipal source, there wasn't the turbidity in the water. My concern with filling the pool, because we looked at two different ways to fill it from a municipal source once the well was not a viable option. The first ended up being, can we fill it from a hydrant?
Mhm.
Having it, which was, a nice idea because it's quick. I had talked to Chief Murphy about doing that, and he said that last time that they did that, it ends up dropping the water pressure in the area of town where the hydrant is. And then people
Mhm.
end up having turbidity in their home lines. And so we ended up filling it just with a regular hose. It only took a couple of days. It actually filled quite quickly. The water was clean and really close to the needed pH and just a little bit of chlorine, and we got it to where it needed to be. So it actually was a pretty good way to do it.
Thanks.
Okay, trustees, any other comments, questions? So yeah, quarterly, and we'll try to do a visual high level as well. Okay, moving on to item number 7, our discussion on our 2023 budget.
Wonderful. I want to start off and preface this with some gratitude. Thanks to all of you for your patience while we combed through and got everything caught up. And thanks to our fantastic staff for really working hard on it as well. With that, we'll move into our presentation. Also, did want to spend just a moment in kind of a review of 2022 and look at some of the accomplishments. These were all accomplishments that were made possible as a result of the budget that was adopted. We had a major year of transition. We have new board, new committee members, and new staff. And I think that a large part of our budget this year really went to supporting everybody as they grow into their new roles. Additionally, our accounting is current. We have successfully revised the short-term rental ordinance. The land use code rewrite is nearly complete. We are underway with our comprehensive roads plan. We'll actually have a draft to present to you at your January meeting. That's not January 23rd, it's January of 23. Stilling Basins just have a couple of weeks left on that project. And the Gazebo Lake project is wrapping up. We're able to accomplish some fire mitigation. And then we had some significant road improvements that included the road base buildup, some culvert maintenance, and finally that striping. I did want to talk a little bit about trends, and this is just a snip from the budget. It is not all of the revenues. This is really just looking at sales tax, property tax, and that short-term rental tax. Wanted to look at this because it's kind of a base without any of the grant funding that the town would have, or any fee revenues. Thank you, Nate. So when we're looking at this is the most predictable, the most stable of the revenues that we're able to look at and build a budget off of. You will see that it looks like they dip there at the end. That's because our projections for 2023 were intentionally very conservative. Just wanting to make sure that we're not overestimating what our revenues are going to be. So that's why you'll see that. You'll also notice that on our short-term rental tax in 2021 and 2022 has spiked, and we anticipate that that's going to be pretty stable throughout that. We did see some interesting trends in the sales tax department. I think that that's either probably because of during COVID, everybody coming up and being in the mountains and then frequenting the businesses. But I also think that it might have had a component with the short-term rental tax and how that was broke out before. So without doing super deep dives into the old revenues, that's what we think occurred there. And then also you have on there that property tax that is both Teller County and El Paso County property taxes combined to get those figures. It was interesting to see the property taxes fluctuate a little bit, and the sales tax revenues. Those are two items that we'll definitely be keeping an eye on as we move into, the end of the year, as well as the first quarter of January. While I'm going through this, feel free to break in with any questions while we're on the slide, and we can revisit too.
Did you hear anything about potential property tax relief? Did he get back to you?
Did not get that phone call made.
Okay, because there's also some things going around potentially. I mean, it hasn't come up yet, but some of the legislators are talking about eliminating what is that? Is that look for a light that's flickering? Yep. Is it mine? Okay. Yeah, sorry. Dealing with some staticky type audio here in the town hall. Okay. Okay, we're back on with you. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties going in here. There are some potential things going on with the state legislature where they're looking at senior citizens, and right now it's a 10-year requirement on their property tax. There's some discussion about trying to either reduce or eliminate that requirement, and I think it's a couple $100,000 exemption for seniors. And right now, I think the big concern is where do they make up the money? Where do they make up the revenue? But that is something that may be happening as well. So we want to kind of keep our finger on the pulse of that in case the bottom falls out, because I'm not sure how that would affect us here locally.
Thank you. So this slide here kind of talks about what we're seeing as those projections for, you know, the budget that was adopted versus the year-end projections. As you can see, we are very, very close in our general fund. I will have another slide here shortly to break that out a little bit more, as well as there's a little bit larger discrepancy of our capital improvement fund that ended up also being, well, we'll discuss that in the next slide as well. Your conservation trust fund is probably the most stable of all of your funds. It is a very small fund. It doesn't change much. And so that one has been pretty.
What was column 1? On the,
Oh,
The
that's
labels?
supposed to be your conservation trust fund. That's where
Okay.
I did not edit the chart.
Okay.
Or the title of that column. Column 1 is the conservation trust fund. And it is a very small fund. It has about $10,600 annually that we receive from your Colorado Lottery Fund proceeds. That fund is typically, always earmarked for parks and recreation expenses. And the town has no issues whatsoever fulfilling those expense obligations. We'll go in next to. So we did have identified a couple of general fund key budgetary impacts. So just some things that were impacting this year's budget. There was for 2022, $20,000 worth of parking fee revenues that were not realized because we decided to not do the paid parking. Also, we discovered that there were some under budgeted expenses for employee health insurance, retirement, and workman's comp. And I believe that that's just because the town was not operating at full staff. And so it was hard to anticipate what those expenses were going to be. And then we also had some unbudgeted facility maintenance needs. And we can keep going. And the capital fund, a couple of key budgetary impacts there is that we did have some inflated costs with the Stilling Basins project. That project just by the time it went to bid and then a bid was received, it had the cost of everything had increased, I believe, mostly because of the lack of workforce available for private contractors and companies, and also because of inflation. We also incurred some additional costs for infrastructure repair at the lake with the needed pipe that was needing to be replaced. We also were awarded the CPW grant. So we had some flexibility there. We had originally budgeted to do the bear-proof trash cans at the parks out of a different fund. And because of the award of this grant, we'll be able to do so next year and it won't impact that other funding. It frees it up a little bit. And then I know that there was the restroom at Pool Park that ended up being cost prohibitive. So I'll talk about some options for that as we go along as well. So as far as opportunities for investment in the community and with your budget in 2023, there are certainly others among these, but continued staff, board, and committee development. I think it's also a goal of ours to be looking at the way things are done now and identifying areas for increasing our organizational efficiency. Of course, we have needs at our marshal's office with the body cams and vehicle replacement. Certainly some need for asset management and increased utilization of our assets. And here we are at the pool feasibility study. So you have not yet received, but you will, a letter telling us that we have not received the READY grant to do the pool feasibility study. However, thanks to Mr. Leopold, we do have the opportunity to work with the University of Colorado University Technical Assistance Team It is a group of students that come out with one of their professors and work in their core coursework area to help communities. It was a program put together in collaboration with the university by the Department of Local Affairs. And this is a really great, cost-effective way to accomplish this project. So I was able to make contact with the gentleman that handles that program today. We'll be getting together next week and kind of putting together a little bit of a package on what that would look like. And should that be something that the board want to do, we anticipate it'll be under $2,000 to do that. So should that be something that the board would like to pursue, we can put together an MOU and get started beginning of the year. And then, of course, there's always additional parks projects and wildfire mitigation needing to occur. And I left others here because I would like to make sure that there are not items that I'm missing or hear from you all.
You know, I like the idea of the increased. Is it just me? We're still getting some noise in here, but it must be just me. The utilization of our assets. You know, if we can make the pool somehow be a year-round asset instead of a 2-month asset, that would be fantastic. If we can do the old marshal's office, turn that into an asset, you know, as well. I think there's a lot of opportunity with both to increase our utilization, and I would love to see both of them get done.
Yeah, I think we could probably utilize some community input too. There's probably some really great ideas with the marshal
Absolutely.
office. And of course, how we would be able to keep the pool open year round. Some smart cookies out there that have
Yeah,
probably,
if we can just modify the pool to be able to use the restroom facilities year round, and if the septic system can handle it.
Yeah.
But, you know, they were talking about putting in a whole, you know, at one point in time, we were talking about putting in a whole new restroom facility. It's like, you know, then we'd have to dig down anyway. So it's like, if we can use that asset and that septic system and have it be available year round. To me, that seems like a good asset utilization
Yeah,
program
absolutely.
to try to increase the. how we
and,
use it.
and there's potential for some grant money as well with, investing in that study still, right? So,
Yes, absolutely. So the discussion that I had, his name's Jeff, and I'm not remembering his last name right now. Wood. Jeff Wood. The discussion that I had with him, because I really told him that our intent with that study is to position us to be able to make the improvements that we are able to discover as a result of the study. And he said, absolutely, this is a project that would help to position the town to apply for either GoCo funding or other funding that would be appropriate for the project. So before we get into this slide, Nate and I have been crunching numbers. We're looking at 2023, where we're evaluating the operating needs and capital needs, as well as our revenues coming in. And we feel as though it again is going to be a very, very close year. We're looking at probably about a $30,000 to $40,000 deficit in 2024, should we want to include the pool in that budget. So when we are preparing your budget for your next meeting for adoption, I think what we'd hope to, excuse me, what we'd hope to gauge from you is how conservative you would like us to be with that in regards to requests from committees, requests from the pool, or the ability to have the pool open, continuing to support staff and just kind of getting a feel from you. Certainly with this feasibility study right now, we could easily leave the pool in there into the budget, knowing that if it were to open, it could possibly run at a deficit as it did this year. And then based on the feasibility study and what we learned from that, we can adjust after the first quarter. The other thing that I think that we want to really do over the next 2 quarters is watch these revenues, see how they're trending and for the first quarter of 2021 and see where we're at before we make that decision also.
I've got more thoughts. I'm kind of wondering if we shouldn't open up the capability to have sponsors and or donation for the pool. To me, it'd be real easy, you go out and try to get a sponsor or advertiser and you let them hang a sign on the side of it. We'd have to make sure that it doesn't get crossways with the codes. But, that's, to me, that seems like something that we could fairly easily do. And it'd be interesting to see if we would get any sponsorships or donations. We could easily make things contingent upon separate funding and get closer to a balanced budget too.
Mhm.
But yeah, thoughts.
Yeah. Not a huge fan of the pool, just milking those dollars away. I don't know. It'd be nice to, yes, if we could find some altruistic citizens of Green Mountain Falls that want to donate. If we could really get that place squared away, especially with the bathroom and some certain renovations and even lease it. I don't know what the long-term solution really is to it. Is that just a short term, with people donating funds?
I think we'd have to see if we could actually get sponsors or
Yeah.
donations.
I mean, that'd be great. I mean,
And then really, ideally in my mind, we would say no pool unless we could get that
yeah.
revenue from other sources. Maybe I should just say revenue from other sources. And if we had it by April 1st, then that'd be a definite go, no go. So if we had it, then absolutely we're going to open it. If we don't, then we'd have to go through the assessment and look and see how we're doing financially to make sure that it isn't gonna.
Well, it's how we open it too, right? It's like, are we going to utilize the same contractors? Probably not. I don't know. That's a decision for the board, obviously, but that's a real tough cookie because looking at those numbers, there's an awful lot of folks in this town that want to volunteer, to potentially keep the place open.
And there's a lot of support from the
Yeah.
community for the pool, but it's still roughly is it still around 30 grand we're estimating?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that might be on the low side if we include public works hours.
Yeah, but public works hours aren't going to impact the budget.
Okay.
But that's including lifeguards.
That would be
Yeah.
including lifeguards. So the number that you have in there is a projection of what we anticipate that it would cost to staff the pool as well as operating utilities. Regardless of whether or not the pool is open, I do feel as though it's, going to have some expenses associated with it. And the other component that I think is important to consider in this is that, depending on what the study entails, is it better to have it open so that we're able to actually evaluate it? I feel like at some point in time, if we're looking at the infrastructure of the pool, having it full operating and open ends up being a better way to evaluate it versus evaluating a pool that's sitting empty.
How effective is the heater for that pool?
The heater works great.
So, I mean,
We didn't run it at
could
full
we
blast.
open it even little earlier than I would?
I think if we're opening it earlier, it's costing more. So on what I would recommend doing is kind of a pilot year.
Mhm.
if we were to have it open, I think that we do it as a pilot year. We utilize this study to look at it, and then we also evaluate our ability to staff it independently,
Utilizing Public Works and
utilizing Public Works and recruiting and hiring lifeguards.
yeah, it's gonna be something to brainstorm where we're gonna try to find those folks
Yeah.
that want to come down and
Thoughts on sponsorship and, I mean, other revenue sources to. Because it could mean advertising, could mean signs up on it, and that may not go over very well.
yeah.
But if it's a means to open it and keep it running versus not opening it, then I think people would probably maybe put up with a few signs.
Sponsorship's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we're gonna come up with a real zinger tonight, you know, like a solution for this.
I have seen sponsorship on CDOT vehicles.
Yeah.
I kid
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
not. They have
Yeah.
like, I think it's an insurance company. Is it Geico?
Mm-hmm.
They basically, they have CDOT and then they have Geico. Right next to it. And so I'm sure they get a certain amount of money.
And certainly like
Right.
incentives for folks that do sponsor.
Yep.
You know, for their staff or something to be able to
Yeah.
while out a couple nights in the summer. I don't know.
Yeah. So
Gotta
I would
figure
like to at least explore
I like the
personally, I'd like
sponsorship.
to march headlong into it
Hmm.
and start looking for sponsors, but
Well, there may be other revenue streams. I mean, the pool has always run at a deficit. This
Yeah,
is
the-
nothing new, but I think that it's becoming more expensive, so the
Yeah.
losses are greater. As the costs go up. And I think sponsorship, I'm not necessarily opposed to it. But I don't know that we've really promoted the pool for other uses. Like, for private parties.
Hmm.
That, I'm not saying that hasn't happened, but I don't think it's really been promoted.
yeah, and that's something I think we could also partner with, I know Becky's been talking with the water park folks up in Woodland. Again, to see if there's a way to get a utilization of the asset up. If there's things that they are needing and they don't have space where and our pool would suffice, we could have them come on down here.
Yeah, I kind of wonder about stuff like Red Cross training. I don't know
Mm.
where that happens, but they have to use some facility for.
Church of the
lifeguard
Wildwood will-
training and that kind of thing.
Yeah, Church of the Wildwood's going to be hooking up, a little more, with the Red Cross. So that's something that could certainly be utilized for that. And who knows, like I said, with the sponsorship, you give them incentives. I mean, I think if we can throw anything at this, it'll stick. I mean, maybe something does at least, eventually. I think the sponsorship's a brilliant idea. I think that's great. Yeah, I don't, is it, because you served in the previous board as well. Is it in your experience, it just, maybe it was just always something that was kind of absorbed by the town and never like creatively really tackled, not
It's,
for no fault of anybody. It's just like.
no,
what
it's
do you-
been
what do
a,
you do
it's
with
been a
this?
lot of work and, I know that in past years, the clerk was down there, basically supervising every day.
Yeah,
I mean, she wasn't there all day, but she was there every day.
okay. So that
And-
absorbs some costs. Yeah.
Yeah, so, in addition to having the lifeguards, somebody has to be in charge. And, I guess I'm thinking that the more uses that don't require a lot of staff, the better.
Yeah.
Like if somebody's, paying to use the facility for swimming lessons, you don't really need a lifeguard while they're there. And probably the same thing would be true for the Red Cross.
And that's another big thing. That's a good thing you bring up there. I mean, I want my daughter to have some more swimming lessons, I mean, is that something we could put together? Make a little bit of a profit?
I think it would have to
Try to-
depend on who we could get to actually lifeguard it and do it. Because that a lot of times it is the lifeguards looking for extra revenue to.
Mhm.
Again, Darlene's got the hookup with Red Cross. I mean, maybe there's some network of underground lifeguards, just
Yeah, and
floating around here.
I was at a hot spring the other day and the pool was empty except for when they were having water aerobics. So, it was packed with people with their pool noodles. I mean, it didn't really need a lot of equipment. It was a larger pool, but I don't know that we've really played around with a lot of programs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've just had, as far as I know, it's been like open, like lap swim
Yeah.
early in the morning and then, then it's just open to the general public. But that open time or the exercise time I don't think it's ever really been, done in any kind of an
Yeah.
organized way.
Mm.
And I've never seen it really utilized that much either during that time. So maybe a program would be good.
And I think that study, what it would help to do is, I mean, it does include a component of surveying the community. And I think that would help to gauge the appetite for,
The need.
Yeah, exactly. Other programming. How many kids in the community do we have that we actually think would take swim lessons? And the same, are there yoga instructors out there that would rent it out and host a yoga class? Those types of creative solutions.
Or to explore other options to do with the space.
Well, I mean, to get Patty certified and all this, I mean, you're not just jumping right into fresh water like quarries or saltwater, I mean, there's scuba.
Right.
So
So,
there's all sorts of cool things we could do, I guess,
Mhm.
creatively come up with.
and the budget that we looked at, included in that staffing needs would be, the cost of certifying like 8 lifeguards. I think we saw, we'd be able to do that through or with the assistance of Woodland Park.
And I'm actually opposed to when we're having general use. Not having lifeguards is really not an option to me because we had kids trying to jump off the roof. In the
No,
pool.
I don't think
So-
anybody's thinking that we don't need lifeguards.
Okay, well, that is something that actually came up at one point.
There's a lot of
Oh.
people that are actually,
That think we don't.
yeah, I've been
Yeah,
approached.
just
by
put
it,
up a
it's like,
sign,
why even
kind of
bother?
like hotels, and it's like, yeah, no. Especially when we just had, even this last summer, a situation where we had some kids trying to climb up on the roof and jump in.
Yeah.
It's like, no. So if we're gonna open it, I want lifeguards.
Well, I think, again, sponsorships, that's a really good idea, I mean, we just gotta find a way to mitigate all this cost. And again, folks just taking care of the pool, not these contractors. Like, I think we can handle it. I mean, the material is relatively inexpensive for like chlorine and all that stuff. And it's a matter of hundreds of dollars, not $30,000+ or something.
I'd be really
Wacky.
curious to see what they come up with. I mean, I'm just thinking, what if we were renting out the parking lot during off season? I mean, that's prime property right there, right in the middle of town corner. Whether it was, I don't know. What could go there, but it'd be nice if it would utilize, because it's just kind of, it's really underutilized most of the year.
Yeah, we'll bring a circus into town or something, That's not a bad idea, actually. We're gonna actually,
Small
Look into
Ferris wheel, small Ferris wheel.
yeah,
It'd be
We'll figure it
a food truck corral. I mean, there'd be,
yeah.
it's a big space.
Yeah.
And it's right next to the park. Right next to the creek, there might be some things that could happen when the pool's not open.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of solutions.
Anyway, I'm curious to see what they come up with. If this
yeah,
is
just gotta
something that's.
throw as much at it as possible and see what sticks, I guess.
So
We can start with the sponsorships.
For the purposes of our budget adoption for next meeting, what we can certainly do is leave it in there, realizing that if it opens, it will operate as a deficit and that there are some opportunities to help to offset that cost. But that also, if the feasibility study comes back and it's not all something that you all want to do as far as opening the pool, when we get a little bit closer, we can certainly amend the budget.
Yeah. And again, not to beat a dead horse, but that brilliant sponsorship idea, you know, I mean, if you get a bunch of businesses up in the Woodland Park, you know, this immediate area, they contributed X amount of dollars and all their employees can utilize the pool for free. You know, I mean, if we can get 30 people, $1,000 or 30 businesses or even a dozen, you know, half dozen, I mean, it's going to make a dent.
I agree that a sponsorship campaign is a great way to help to offset some costs, but it's also a lot to manage. So what I think that I would like to do with that too is build it into our university technical assistants to see if they can design some sort of a sponsorship campaign.
Okay.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, so next slide, please, Nate. Thanks. So we did discuss the quarterly update to the Board of Trustees. We'll look at some templates. I definitely want to ensure that we have Sunday King's input on that as well. But we'll start working on some examples. And then another thing that I think would end up be very valuable for you all is some financial planning and beginning to look at you know, what all it is that we hope to achieve and how do we get there. So if that's something that you're on board with, I'll work with Mr. Leopold and we'll get something scheduled.
When are we thinking about scheduling that?
I would hope to do so like towards
Like January? Or
probably
sooner?
first quarter, but probably towards the end of first quarter.
Yeah. Okay. When do you think?
February, I think.
February? Okay. Thank you. That'd be great.
Okay, I'm trying to think of what other questions you may have. And I think that there were, you know, there's probably some other discussion that while we have Todd Leopold here that you all might benefit from. I guess that's a good point. Do we want to have an additional budget workshop? Knowing that we've got very little time in between now and the end of the year for budget adoption.
When can we get the draft file? Yeah,
Probably next week.
I would say we probably ought to have a chance to look at the draft file. Our next meeting is actually not, we're swapping with planning commission.
Mhm.
So that kind of puts it into December.
So none of the 6th?
Yeah, and the other thing, when we get it, we probably ought to, can we publish a draft out on our website?
We can publish a draft out on the website. I would prefer for you all to have a chance to look at it before it goes out so that your questions are answered. We did post that we will be having a public hearing for the adoption of your budget on December the 13th. So I would like to adhere to that timeline if at all possible. Outside of that, I, you know, if there's time in between now and then, or if there's questions that you all have that we can answer, if we need to come together as a group, we certainly can. But we are working towards a pretty tight timeline.
Okay, so if we get the file next week, the 6th, by the 6th or 7th. I know it'd be a
Tuesday
quick
was-
turnaround. It'd be better if it was Tuesday, because I'm about ready to ask the trustees if we can get any comments in by the 9th.
That's great.
So Tuesday and comments in by the 9th.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great point. So we can certainly do our budget work session on the 13th prior to the meeting and hash out any other additional items that you all.
Okay. Yeah, but let's go ahead and keep we get it the 6th, we get comments in by the 9th.
Okay.
I think I know that'll give me enough time, I
Okay.
think.
Everybody good there?
So when would we meet for a workshop?
On the 13th,
13th.
just
Okay.
prior to your
So we get the
meeting.
planning code drafts are posted then. All right.
Well, the planning commission's meeting on, we're swapping with planning commission. So instead of us meeting on the 6th,
Right.
we would meet on the 13th. However, I'd encourage all trustee members to actually meet on the 6th as well. Does that require a publication for the,
Oh, we should
Board?
probably go ahead and post it.
okay?
Just that you may be there, that members of the board may be
Right.
there. And then, yeah. And I'm glad that you brought that up, that December 6th meeting will be the presentation of the land use code. by-
Austin's presentation? Okay, so
Yeah.
that's not gonna be on the Friday, the 2nd. The draft supposed to be submitted or something like that. The
That's just
13th?
his deadline to get,
Okay, that's just his
to get
deadline.
it back to
I
us.
see what you-
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be a full evening on the
That would be
13th.
it.
I mean, do you think an hour of work session is enough before that meeting? I guess we'll find out.
Yeah,
Based on your
let's see,
comments.
based on the comment. I mean, if all you get is, a couple persons' comments and they're a little bit here, a little bit there, then I would think the hour would be more than sufficient.
Okay. Sounds good.
So good, that's gonna be the 13th.
Yeah, we meet on
Okay,
13th.
that's too easy.
Nate, will you go
Yep.
back to the slide with the balancing rocks? Yeah,
What time do we want to meet on? 13th?
this one got
Okay, 6. It's gonna be 6.
popped over. That's why I knew that there was something that we were missing. I was like, oh, I know that we built in an opportunity for Todd Leopold to share with us. So we did, based on our 2022 projections, identify where we think that we're going to be in the remaining funds from your fund balance for 2022, which is that 458,000 and change number. That's roughly 6 months of operating costs. Should, for some reason, all of your revenues all of a sudden cease to come in. Most of our revenues are tax revenues. They're submitted on are received on a quarterly basis. Monthly.
Well, one, Mayor, trustees, thank you for having me. Todd Leopold, Department of Local Affairs, the Division of Local Government, and I'm your regional manager. And I've just been fortunate to be able to spend some time with Becky and staff to kind of work through some of the budget issues. This is just a good example as we talk about, I think having a good financial planning workshop really would be valuable for not only the town, the community, as we talk about certain issues is that, we spent some time on the pool here. But we're going to talk a little bit about, fund balance reserves and what do you want? Not only where you're at to date, and this is a good example of kind of where you're at to date, but where do you want to be in 3 years? What's appropriate fund balance reserves? And a lot of information out there. The Government Finance Officers Association has good criteria around this, but really it's about setting you up for success. How do we make sure not only the town is thriving financially, but you also have a opportunity to make investments. And as we talk about the budget, we always talk about investments. So I'm happy to spend some time with you all. We're going to talk about policies or maybe some financial policies you'd like to put in place. You really alluded to some of the conversations we had about when do you want financial information, what the level of information you'd like to see. You spoke about variances between your budget and your actuals. So we'll talk about that. I think by that February timeframe, templates for y'all to see what that looks like on a quarterly basis. So I just wanted to share with you, we've spent some good amount of time here as we talk about the financial condition of the organization. And quite honestly, I think the town's really positioned well, but we're also looking 1, 3, and 5 years down the road. And where do you want to be? And that's not only operationally, but it's also about putting away the appropriate reserve balances to ensure that as those unanticipated needs, whether they're emergency related or things that just come up that are unknown, revenue declines, et cetera, whether that's coming down from legislative changes or from just changes in policy decisions at the town level, we can accommodate those without seeing dramatic impacts to operations. So I just want to share that with you. I think this is just a good example as we talk about, let's have a foundational basis for you all. So you know where the position of the town is. I know the staff have done a good job of kind of getting you to a baseline, but really I'm saying, let's move and start looking at the future a little bit too. So any questions you have for me, I'm happy to answer, but I think we've done some good work, at least on the front end.
I know personally, I like to see a year's worth.
Yep.
And I call it reserves. I know it's not the correct technical term, but I call it reserves anyway. That's my own personal stuff. I like to try to have a year's worth of a minimum year's worth of reserves.
Yeah.
Now, do I think we can get there in 5 years? No, I don't. That'd be maybe a long term type of thing, is to have a year's worth of reserves. Seeing what I've seen already in some of the budgetary stuff, I think it'd be tough to get there in 5.
Yeah.
I don't think we can do that.
I think looking a little bit about your key revenue streams and how much variation do you see? Property tax, fairly stable. They will go up slowly, but when they decline, it takes longer to come back. Sales tax is a little more up and down, and it has some seasonality attributes to it. So if we can we'll probably spend a little time talking about your major revenue streams. We saw a little bit about some trends, but we may spend some more time talking about how much fluctuation. And quite frankly, that somewhat determines how much of a reserve you may want to look at having, either on a year out. Is 6 months appropriate? Is something in that range? Anything in between? But it's somewhat attributed the diversity and the fluctuation of your revenue streams. You know, if you're talking about a county, they're property tax driven, so you know they're just fairly stable. But if there's a decline in property values, it takes a long time for them to come back. In a city or municipal structure, sales tax is your driving force, and quite frankly, those go down quickly, but they can come back up relatively quickly too, depending on the economy. So we'll spend some time talking about that, because I think it is a good conversation. And as I've always said, it's not a right or wrong. It's about how do you position an organization, and it's a little more of an art, I guess, is how I attribute it to it. But we'll have a good conversation on that.
Yeah, and I know, again, my thoughts, I tend to look at it as far as recurring expenses versus non-recurring expenses.
Mhm.
And I would very much like to have our tax revenues cover our recurring expenses.
Yep.
And then if we have, fees, fines, whatever, then that's that a little extra pad.
Okay.
That we might have. Non-recurring expenses, of course, if we need to pull something out of the reserves and fix something that's broke, then we got to do that. But as long as we're putting something back in, then that makes at least me feel a little bit better about, okay, long term, we're positioning ourselves well.
Yeah, and I will try and look at, we have an operating budget and we have a capital budget, and we'll speak to that. Looking at 5 years out on a capital plan, what are some key, and we talked about assets. You spoke about the assets you have. What are those, and what timeframes are you looking at needing improvements that either are known or we know they're coming up? We're not sure what those are, because as what I've experienced with DOLA and really at the state, if you have a good planning horizon, you can ask for dollars much more effectively. And I can be really more effective for you all to say, hey, sometimes it's a pool. DOLA may not be the right funding source, but maybe that's GOCO grants, and maybe there's other funding opportunities available to you. So having a really solid CIP plan, I think, is important, and we'll talk about that. And the same goes for the operating side of the house.
One of the things that didn't come up, our gazebo and our bridge are going to need work, and that lake and gazebo are pretty much the town brand.
Yeah.
And we gotta protect that. In fact, I would almost like to get the logo So that if anyone uses the logo, we get $1. But yeah, that is our brand and we need to protect the brand.
Well, you have some tremendous assets and ones that can be very costly if they aren't maintained. And so I think somewhat is, you're talking about a budget today, but quite frankly, this is a financial plan for the future. And we're going to spend some time talking a little about the future too.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you all. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Oh, thank you.
All right.
Come back.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're done with that presentation unless you guys have other.
Okay, next item, I know some people joined us late on Zoom. We actually moved public comment to this place in the agenda. We wanted to do that in case you wanted to comment on some of the items that got presented. So we'll open it up for public comment.
Anyone on Zoom wish to make public comment?
There's no one
Going once, going
going
twice.
once, going twice.
Nate, this is Ann. Esch.
Hi, Ann, we can hear you.
I'm listening to you. You're just wonderful. And I wish you all good luck. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann.
Yeah, thanks, Ann.
Anyone else, public comment out there in Zoom land?
Going once, going twice, done. Okay, moving on to reports. Catherine, anything? You want to report on what's happening this weekend?
This weekend, we just approved the signage for the holiday craft show and sale at Sally Bush. And Jan Martin, who's organizing that event, has agreed to allow the tree lighting to begin at Sally Bush. So there'll be an overlap from 4 to 5. We'll gather at Sally Bush. Ian Ferguson, the music director at the UPass Elementary, will be playing with a trio. The UPass Honors Choir will be singing. This is all at Sally Bush. So this is between 4 and 5. And there's a food truck there so folks can get something to eat. There'll also be hot chocolate. Then we'll walk to the church in the Wildwood, and they're hosting caroling in Tattered Hall. We'll have someone on piano to accompany us, and they have caroling books, which will be helpful for a lot of us. And then we head down to the lake where Green Box is sponsoring more refreshments. We'll have additional music there as well. And so the whole thing wraps up around 8. So the weather looks like it'll be seasonal, but not as cold as today. I think it's a high in the 40s is predicted for Sunday. So yes, Marshall. Uh-huh. That is a really good question. I don't know. We'll have to ask Santa.
What time does everything start at Sally Bush?
4.
It all starts at 4.
It all starts at 4. Yeah. And the choir is probably going to sing around 4:30.
Okay.
But all the vendors will still be there at the craft show. And so folks can do a little, get some refreshments,
Well,
check out.
Okay.
Oh, the craft show is from 9 to 5.
9 to 5.
Yeah, it's all day. Yeah, 9 to 5. And thanks for that. I will check with Santa, see what if he's available.
Is that something we want to get posted on our website, you know, as far as the general?
Yeah,
I think trustee Guthrie just sent us
I
an
just-
email with
I
all the
just-
details.
You just sent it out. Okay.
Yeah.
Nick?
I have nothing to report.
Okay, so that means it's back to me and I have some things I probably should go over. Today, the BPACG met with five of our local representatives and 3 of our senators at the state level. BPACG definitely supports local control. And it was encouraging to see at least some of our representatives and senators that echoed what we were wanting. That is something we're very concerned about at PPACG level, is the state trying to take away some local controls. And specifically, the one I've heard is land use. And that concerns me quite a bit because land use is very specific to the area. So I'm hoping that one just kind of goes away. PPACG also briefed them on unfunded mandates. We are against unfunded mandates. And it was encouraging because I had a newly elected representative sitting next to me, and she is also very much against unfunded mandates. So that was also encouraging, and several others were too. We also briefed them on what PPACG does with senior housing, as far as, you know, trying to set up things to where it's more attainable. That's where we heard about the possibility of the property tax exemption and the 10 years and how that may come up in the legislative session. They were briefed on wildfire mitigation, but it had more to do with the military interface and the interface between civilian, military, and then the National Forest Service. So PPACG is also trying to engage with that. I did make another contact with the House of Representatives. Like I said, she was sitting next to me. She's brand newly elected. Some of the things that were important to her, we're trying to get some input from small towns. And I said, if you feel free to contact me, we exchange numbers. And so hopefully that's another way to help influence. Pikes Peak Regional Building Department. I think I've already said that I'm now one of 3 commissioners. We need to replace me on the advisory board. One of the things that came up that I would actually like to plug is they have a program that's called Careers in Construction. It is basically getting high school students into and training them in for construction jobs. And I know Nancy and I back in Kansas, we had the high school shop build our garage. It was a very good experience. It went very well. And so I've got a little info flyer. It's mainly just kind of promoting, but basically I would encourage folks in town that if you have maybe a small building project, you know, give CICcolorado.org a look up, and you know, maybe you can help assist with some training opportunities for some youth. So I want to plug that. The new STR code takes effect December 6th. Have we gotten any comments? Okay.
No, all of our materials should be up online and at the portal to where they're able to be viewed again, if anybody's having any issues implementing any of those new components, please reach out. We're here to help.
Okay. New land use code, obviously, we're meeting on the 13th. That should be done soon. And I was also able to kind of bend our direct house districts here and say, you know, we are doing a new land use code, and it does include some of the wildland urban interface. We are swapping, I think we've already mentioned that. And the final thing I have is December 7th at 10 a.m. is coffee with the mayor here in town hall. We'll have the K-Cup machine going, and come on up and, you know, just chat if you want, and I'll have my notebook, and if I need to write some things down, I'll write some things down. I do have some info if you're interested. Legislative, you know, it's from PPACG, but it has our legislative themes and whatnot, you know, from the meeting today. And in it, obviously, we say one of our goals is to maximize quality of life through local control. So we're pushing pretty hard on maintaining local control, you know, with our state government. That is all I have. Do we have any committee reports, staff reports?
I have not
By the
received.
time they agreed to meet our price, rolling blackouts.
Could you mute that, please?
Um,
Do you want me to give a committee report, Nate?
No, I was just gonna say I hadn't received any, but if you want to give a verbal, you're more than welcome.
Well, I just wanted to encourage the Board of Trustees to attend our December 6th meeting at 6:30, when Austin will present the land use code draft. We also have his draft ready to go right now, and we could send that out to all the Board of Trustees members as well. It'll be really important for them to take a look at it, although he will present it on the 6th, because they will be, BOT will be voting on that on the 13th. And it's so important that we adhere to this timeline, because this has to be fully passed before the end of December, or we do not get our grants that pay for this. So I just want to be sure that the Board of Trustees is aware of those timelines and how important they are. And there won't be really a chance to wait until the 13th to say, I have this question or that question, or I want to make this change. We need to get those all done by the, you know, really by the 13th. And you have the opportunity to see it now and hear more and ask the attorney questions on the 6th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lamar. Others?
I don't believe there's, I saw David Douglas online earlier. I don't see him now as far as committee reports go. I hadn't received any written ones to include in the packet.
Any staff report?
I do have a brief staff report. I threw together just because I didn't do one last time. Not a whole lot of change from my last report, but just the date of the STR, I got it wrong on this as well, but I just double checked. It's actually the 9th, December 9th, because it was published on November 9th, which was that Wednesday after the meeting, or the next Wednesday after the meeting that it was passed. So that's actually December 9th when that goes into effect. I did work with Munirevs to get some changes into the system. There are some renewals that have already been processed. So basically I'll have to sort of retroactively add that task. The main task was for that guest information packet to prove that they have that together and posted. So anyway, so that'll just be a kind of a retroactive workflow addition. And I'm going to put together just a bulk email to all the STR operators and owners, just so they understand everything that's occurred timeline of everything and then what the new requirements are. But we're still sitting at 54 out of the 60 licenses. This with one pending, that's the 10-530 Pass Avenue. It's actually the second floor above the Blue Moose there, or somewhere in that vicinity. I don't know exactly where the unit is in the building. I just know it's on the second floor. Like I said, just been working with Munirevs a little bit just to fine tune the system a little bit more in accordance with the new STR code. And this is just kind of a recap of land use code updates that we've already talked about. So as Lamar suggested, I would definitely recommend, and we can send the draft out just on a BCC level and post on the website. We received the newest one just yesterday, I believe, or today, I can't remember, but from Austin. So he turned around the comments. We didn't receive really any public comment, but just from the recent comments from the most recent planning commission meetings. So he turned that around quickly. So we now have essentially the final draft that will be presented to the planning commission for consideration. So I can send that out to the board and just I'll do a BCC email just so you have it. I'll also post it on the website so the public can review it as well before the next couple meetings. I would say just one thing on the timeline. The grant does not require it to be passed before the end of the year. The end of the year deadline is just the deadline after which we won't be reimbursed by DOLA for any expenses incurred. So if something were to happen where there's a big a discussion about some part of the land use code that needs to continue, that is possible. The grant has a 90-day closeout period. So we would have to have a final result 90 days after December 31st to be a successful grant. However, we do still have the Kirkpatrick grant funds. So worst case scenario, if we had to have any work done after December 31st, even though DOLA wouldn't pay for it, we could still request funds from Kirkpatrick. However, obviously the sooner the better to get everything done, and we're on schedule now. So I think
I would definitely prefer by then, if we can by December 13th. From what I've seen, attending the planning commission meetings, there hasn't been a lot of public input. And so I think planning commission has done an excellent job of trying to incorporate at least what they believe is to be, the best solution for the town.
I think it's pretty clean code, and it's simplified a lot of things. And I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. It doesn't mean it's the end of it. If there's things that need to be adjusted, that can happen as well moving forward. So that's a pretty short report for me. Any questions?
Any other staff reports?
I did not include a written report to you all tonight. There's not much that we didn't cover already in tonight's meeting, but did want to give you just a quick update on the comprehensive roads plan. Of course, we're looking at a final draft of that for a presentation to you all at a meeting in January. The Stilling Basins project is to the point where they are starting to look at what the final grading and erosion control will look like. It's quite likely that this late in the year, we may have to have them come back and reapply seeds in the springtime, just to help make sure that we get some stuff growing there, but that should be okay to do. And then, of course, the lake project got a little bit of a delay with this weather spell, but it's nearing completion. So we should have two out of, both of our large construction projects wrapped up here in the coming weeks. We'll have a little bit of cleanup to do down here at the Olathe yard. And likely to be seeing at least some preliminary materials for the CSU pump station begin to go in here in the next few weeks. Well, what did they say on the CSU pump station materials? It could be before the end of the year. So just a quick update there. Any questions or any?
The snow removal this morning, seemed a little slower than normal, than at least what I think is normal. Usually when I wake up and I look at it, it's already been done.
That was acknowledged by staff.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so if there's no other
Did you have any?
staff reports,
Nope, I think we're good. I did not receive any, I don't have any correspondence to share either, so.
so if there's no correspondence, trustees, anything else? Let's go home. It's 8:31. This meeting is adjourned.